Hey, Beam Me Up Pod fans, can you believe we are knocking on the door of 2 years as a podcast, and we're coming up on our 100th episode? And to celebrate, we are doing something we've never done before here at Beam Me Up, a Star Trek podcast. We're doing a giveaway. Matt, I am so excited about this giveaway that folks out there have a chance to win.
Well, Brent, you should be, because you can win a Star Trek replica tri-dimensional 3D chess set. This is a fantastic prize that I would love to have in my office. So let's check it out. If you head over to beammeupgiveaway.com, you'll find the entry form over there. And there are multiple ways to enter. You can follow us on Twitter. That's, of course, you can only do once. But then there are 4 other methods of entry that you can complete every single day. You can come back and gain more and more entries. You can visit us on Instagram. You can visit us on Facebook, visit our YouTube page, or even visit our website. Each of these will gain you additional entries every day.
So listen, guys, go over to beammeupgiveaway.com. You'll find all the ways. You guys go every day. You can enter every day, multiple ways, get multiple entries, and increase your odds of winning this fantastic. This isn't a little teeny tiny mini chess set. Like, each of the pieces is 1.5 inches tall, and the whole thing is huge. Like, this is an amazing thing you want, especially as a Star Trek fan. So you guys go out there, do that. Beam Me Up giveaway. Matt, the only problem I have with this whole thing is you and I cannot win it. So you guys go do that. beammeupgiveaway.com.
The final frontier begins.
This is about saving the future of humanity.
This is a huge victory for the good guys.
You've never seen Voyager.
Commitment to this course of action is not emotional.
Scotty, beam us up.
Welcome to Beam Me Up, a Star Trek podcast. I am Brent Allen, and this is one of our very special supplemental episodes, which means it's just me. Matt's not here. In fact, Matt is not allowed to listen to these. And this might be my favorite thing of all of these supplemental shows that we do. Matt, if you're listening, go away. Shoo, you're not supposed to be here. If anyone else out there is doing a first-time watch alongside Matt, I can't force you to not listen, but I would recommend you turn this off, because this episode is going to be filled with all sorts of spoilers for all things Star Trek Voyager Season 3. We're going to talk about things that happen in the episode. We'll talk about things that happen in future seasons that these episodes are going to affect. We're going to talk about what these episodes are about, because this is the show where we decide which episodes from Voyager Season 3 we're going to be watching, which ones we're going to be flat out skipping, and which ones we'll give to Matt for possible extra viewing. Now, for those of you guys that have been following along since the beginning, you know that our mission here at Beam Me Up has been to take a Star Trek newbie, a first-time watcher, and beam them up into the fandom by introducing them to the entire universe of Star Trek. But how do you convince over 800 and growing hours of Star Trek material into a manageable 7-season run? That's about 150-ish, 175-ish episodes, and still give our Trek newbie a relatively complete understanding of what Star Trek is really all about. You know, the message, the hope of the future, that Roddenberry vision of the future. What about the story of the future that Trek is trying to tell? So that said, as the host and the guy who's watched Star Trek a whole lot, all the way through multiple times, it has fallen on my shoulders to pick not just the good episodes, but the episodes that fit within the mission of this podcast, which also means sometimes we have to be judicious with which ones we choose for Matt and which ones we let go. Sometimes meaning we have to get rid of some of our favorite episodes or storylines because we're just spending our limited time focused on the main ones that pull through the story. Now, those are always hard choices. And this season's going to be no different. I guarantee you there are going to be some phenomenal episodes that we're going to have to leave off to the side. And there's going to be some questionable ones that actually are quite important that we're probably going to have to bring in. It's just a guess. We'll see how it goes. But I've decided to invite others into this journey, especially you, my dear listener, in on the process of how do we pick and choose these episodes, mostly because I got tired of y'all's emails going, how could you leave that episode out? And why'd you put that one in? This is why. Here's this is how the sausage is getting made here at Beam Me Up right here. Now, I actually really love getting to do these shows because the nature of the show with Matt is every episode just has to be me and him. But with episodes like these, the supplemental episodes charting the courses where Matt's not here, I get the chance to invite someone new onto the show. And usually I'm just meeting them for the very first time as we're doing this, which is pretty cool about podcasting. We're taking this shared fandom and meeting new friends, having an instant connection. But that's not the case this time. Actually, this time we have a returning guest to the show, someone who was with us a long time ago, way back during Picard season 1. We were doing a supplemental. He came on the show with his entire crew from the Nerd Trek podcast. Only this time it's not the entire crew. It's just one. Phil is back with us today from the Nerd Trek podcast. Phil, welcome back to Beam Me Up.
It's just me, sir. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
No, man.
This is going to be quite the, this is already proven to be quite the, I don't even know what the right word is. Trying to condense this whole season down. It's an undertaking.
It's a thing. I think people think that's just going to be easy. And typically what I hear from people is like, oh, I've got the easy answer. Every episode's important. You got to watch them all, which
right.
As a Trekkie, I'm inclined to be like, yeah, I agree, but that's not actually the mission of this show. And this seat is a lot harder than people, might think it is.
This is one of the hardest things I've had to do, to actually try and be a little bit objective and figure out what can just be discarded, what actually does push the storyline along and the character development along.
Mm-hmm.
It's been tricky, and I'm sure we're going to have some really good conversation about some of these episodes, because it's kind of all over the place for season 3.
I think the one that always jumps to my mind the most of like, why did you put that episode in, was the season 2 premiere from Next Generation, The Child, which is the one where Deanna gets impregnated by like a little speck of light. And, and it's like, why would you do that? Because it wasn't a terribly terrific episode. There wasn't some big message behind it, although it was agency and choice and all that kind of stuff. But it was one of those where within this episode, you had Geordi getting promoted to chief engineer. You had Worf getting promoted to chief of security and changing his uniform color. You had Riker growing the beard. You had Dr. Pulaski coming. You had Dr. Crusher leaving.
Yep.
You had all of these things happening around that you could explain, but it would just be like list after list after list. And at some point you just go, let's just watch the episode. It'll be fine.
Yeah. That season 2 to season 3 transition was kind of where the Next Generation matured and grew up. And that's kind of what sets the stage for the next 4 years. So yeah, The Child, not a good episode. Everything else going on around it, you got to touch on it. So.
Exactly. And then there's other episodes that you're like, well, why didn't you include that really, really, really good episode? And I can't think of any off the top of my head right now, but I know there's been several, but
everybody gets those. Yeah.
Exactly. So Phil, thank you so much for jumping in to help me pick these out. Now you are from the Nerd Trek podcast. Tell the folks out there, because we are like sister podcasts, cousin podcasts. Like we started within a week or two of each other.
We're kind of brothers in arms here.
Yeah.
It
so
feels like.
So what do you guys got going on? What's the deal with your show over there?
So Jeff and I are good friends, and our third co-host, David, is friends with Jeff, and he's a big Star Wars nerd and is into D&D and other stuff like that. And we do a lot of nerd stuff, but Jeff and I are the hardcore Trekkers. I'm a completist. I've seen everything multiple times. Jeff has seen everything, I believe, except for DS9 and some Enterprise.
Mm-hmm.
But David is the one who hasn't really seen much. He's seen an episode here and there kind of randomly, but never really got into it. So we decided to drag him along through all 800 episodes plus of what encompasses the Star Trek universe. So we started out with the original series, worked our way through the animated, all the TOS movies, and now we're about midway through season 4 of the Next Generation, as we kind of move through chronologically in the Star Trek universe and by release.
So you said by release. So would you guys get to, I think it's season 6 of Next Generation when Deep Space Nine comes along? Are you going to bounce back and forth between the two? Or are you going to stay in one?
For David's sanity, we're going to continue on until the end of TNG, and then we'll go to Deep Space Nine. We were looking at the overlap and we're like, oh, how cruel do we want to be? But no, for his sanity, we're going to just stick with one series until completion, go to the movies, then go to the next series.
I got to tell you, I mean, you guys certainly, I'm not trying to convince you one way or the other. I'm just saying this because I didn't come to Star Trek until the latter seasons of Voyager. So Deep Space Nine was already off the air. Next Generation had long been off the air. Obviously, TOS wasn't even a blip on my radar. And the only way that I've ever watched Star Trek is by series. Like I've never watched I've never had more than one Star Trek on TV at the same time before.
Oh.
And this run is the very first time that I'm going by air date order. And it changes the way that I've seen this show and that I view the show. And it's interesting watching how the two seasons go back and forth. And like, I'm doing future prep right now on like Voyager season 5, which is Deep Space Nine season 7. And there's some things that they're inserting into Voyager that actually preps people for what comes up in Deep Space Nine. It's crazy seeing how the
really
two go. You wouldn't think they would. And how do you do that? They're in the Delta Quadrant, and the stories have stopped crossing over by that point. But there are ideas that they introduce that really come back to play later. So it's been interesting for me to go through it for the very first time. Like,
yeah, especially with the different feels that each series kind of has, especially the DS9, which is a little more darker, but has better arcs than a lot of the other series have had up until recently. But yeah, that bouncing back and forth, that's probably an interesting way to kind of,
It's interesting.
Now that I'm thinking more about it, I'm like, okay, that may be a good rewatch for the future.
I mean, especially when you get into Next Generation, as they move into episodes like Chain of Command that prepare you for what's getting ready to happen in Emissary to kick off Deep Space Nine. And then when they go into Deep Space Nine and they introduce the Maquis, which is completely preparing you for Voyager, but they introduce the Maquis and then they bounce it back over to Next Generation and they bring the Rolaren storyline into it, and then it bounces back over to Deep Space. Like, it's this
the way they're interweaving everything together.
It's really neat.
Why is Cisco so pissed off at Picard? Like, well, guess what?
Right. So it's been interesting. I gotta say.
I like it.
So, though I do have to say, I think, just for those of you out there wondering, I think when we get to that 10 episode arc for the season finale of Deep Space Nine, I think I'm going to push pause on the going back and forth and say, look, we're just going to finish Deep Space Nine and then we'll get back to Voyager. It'll be fine. I think
you got to handle it as one big chunk instead of trying to go back and forth.
Yeah. And I think listeners out there, you can email in and let me know, because I'm still trying. How do I take 10 episodes? We're not going to do one episode on 10 on a whole basically a whole modern day series season. I think what it's going to be is it'll, like, if you watch those episodes, if you think of it all as like one big play, like the first 3 episodes are like the first act. And then like, I think the second 2 are like a middle act. And then like the next 3 are like a third act. And then you get the finale with what you left behind. So I don't know. It's interesting. Phil, I got a question for you though. You've told me earlier when I first asked you guys, I said, hey, you guys, come on, let's do Voyager. And I think it was Jeff who's like, actually, Phil's the guy you want for Voyager. Don't get us, just get Phil, because he's a big Voyager guy. You mentioned to me a few minutes ago, Voyager, you love Voyager. That's your Trek. Why Voyager? Yeah. What's your deal with that?
I don't know. Voyager has taken so much heat for so long, and I think it's just been recently that's starting to get some more love within the community. And I've kind of always been the guy who's like, when somebody asks you, oh, what are you watching or rewatching right now? And I'm kind of always like, oh, I'm watching Voyager, kind of under my breath. I don't know. I think it was a combination of the ship, the premise getting stuck out literally where no one has gone before.
Except for Amelia
and the characters. And the rest of the 47s. Yeah. we run into so many humans. It's very awkward. But yeah, I think it was just a combination of all these different elements. And that was the primary show that was on when I was a teenager, and I was watching like every show all the time when I was really getting into Trek. And so I think that always stuck with me. And the first couple seasons were rough. It had its moments,
like
but here in season,
like Next Generation,
like TNG,
like Discovery, like and I gotta believe I loved the first season of Picard. I really did. I've got to believe by the time we get to season 2 and season 3, we'll look back on season 1 and go, oh, it was a little rough. I've got to believe. I could be wrong, but I've got to believe that's the way it's going to be.
And with Picard, I have a feeling it's going to take a little more of a turn away from Picard himself and more towards integrating like Seven and other characters that are coming back. So I'm looking forward to seeing where that goes. But for Voyager, it's always been a favorite of mine. There are very few episodes. If one comes on, I look at it and I'm like, oh no, and immediately change the channel. There's some character stuff that I don't care for. I'm not a big Neelix fan. I'll get that right out there. But there was going through.
I gotta ask, why not Neelix? Because he's one of my favorite characters. I love Neelix. I really do.
And I don't know if he just rubbed me the wrong way, especially in those first couple seasons. Like season 3 going forward is kind of where I gained some appreciation for Neelix.
You mean when
especially
he broke up with
once
Kes?
they get to once they get to the Necrid Expanse where he doesn't know anything beyond that, and he's trying to figure out, where do I go from here? How do I fit in? And I related a lot to that as a nerdy, awkward teenager. There was a lot of that. Okay, what am I going to do now? What should I can't just. And Janeway has a great line in one of the episodes where she's like, you're part of a family now. You can't just turn and run away when things get hard. This is what we do. And so, yeah, I don't, those first couple seasons, I think it was annoying Neelix that got me going the wrong way.
The only time in all of Star Trek that I've ever cried, and I mean physically shed a tear, was for Neelix. And it was that like second to last episode when he left the ship and he's like doing that walk down the hallway with everybody. It got me. It destroyed me, and it still does. Like every time I watch that episode,
the corridor.
When he gets to Tuvok at the end, I'm like, oh my, I just can't. No.
Yeah, especially after all they've been through. And okay, Mr. Vulcan.
Right. And then he pops up on the screen for the next episode, like, hey, we're still talking to you. And I'm like, oh, okay. Oh, he's still there. Fine. So anyway.
And Ethan Phillips is a great guy, great actor.
Oh,
I got to meet him a couple of times at conventions. Super nice guy. Couldn't be any better. So yeah.
Do you think you would have liked Neelix better if they would have cast Bob Picardo in it? Because he originally, that's the role he auditioned for.
Yeah. It's one of those things. It's been so long now. You can't see anybody playing other than what was cast.
Who did.
Yeah. He's the Doctor. It's not with his personality and his it's hard to hindsight is not 2020. It's very convoluted.
Definitely. Well, Phil, why don't we go ahead and jump into Voyager season 3? And now, as I mentioned earlier, we're going to be taking a look at all these episodes coming up through season 3 of Voyager. We're going to go episode by episode. I'll read a little show description just to help us remember what the episode was about. And we'll discuss it if it's essential viewing that Matt absolutely has to see as a part of the mission of this show. Or is it like, we'll put it on the extra viewing list because it's a good episode and we really like it, but it's really not. Like, if we're being honest, it's really not. And then there's the ones that like, this episode should be erased from memory and we're just going to skip over it and we're never going to mention it or talk about it again. Okay, maybe it's not that bad, but we'll see where that goes. Now, the extra viewing episodes, those are available on our Patreon feed. Actually, as we record this, Phil, a brand new extra viewing episode just went up. So yeah, that was for last month, for the month of July. We were recording this a couple weeks early for when it's going to go out. But if you guys are interested in that, you can go over to patreon.com/beatmeup and that will get you all that information about how you guys can do that and be a part of joining the show and let you know about some new stuff we have coming up here at the show as well. Now, a couple of ground rules we'll have here, Phil. 2-parters or multiple episode story arcs, we generally treat as one unless they're like really, really long. For example, in Deep Space Nine, the Circle trilogy, we did all 3 episodes as one because that was a single story. I think there are a few 2-parters in this particular season. I don't know that there's anything 3. Also, like, we can do something weird like we did another Deep Space Nine one. We took from the same season 2 different Gold Dukat episodes that were like, one was a sequel of the other, but they were separated by like 10 episodes over the course of the season, but we smushed them together and made them one episode because it gave us a Dukat sandwich. I like it. And it gave us a good discussion of who Gold Dukat is, which for Deep Space Nine is really important going forward. So we can play this, but for the most part, we are going to be watching these in air date order, mixing them in with mixing them with Deep Space Nine season 5, because these are the 2 seasons that are airing concurrently. We're also going to get the movie First Contact in this season as well. So we will be watching that. That's not up for discussion. It will happen. So we'll get that. Now, I have my list of where I kind of think everything should go, but we're going to talk it out. We'll see if you agree. We'll see if we can move them around. I've got some question marks because there's some that I'm like, I don't really know. And that's where we are. So Phil, if you're ready for it, why don't we go ahead and jump in to Voyager season 3. All right. Well, we'll start at the beginning where you should always start with Basics Part 2. Actually, we're going to go ahead and do this one because we're watching Basics Part 1 and we'll attach those together. Actually, I think as people listen to this, we've already done that one. But for completionist's sake, Basics Part 2 is the crew has been marooned by the Kazon on a primitive planet, and Janeway and the crew had to fight for their lives while Suter and Paris and the Doctor are left on board Voyager and try to sabotage everything to get the crew back. Needless to say, they win, and Bob's your uncle. There we go. So
thank goodness.
I think we should watch it.
Especially with Suter.
Yes.
Suter's a great character.
Absolutely. All right, so let's move on then. Episode 2 from season 3, Flashback. This is basically what happened while the rest of Star Trek 6 was happening. What happened with Sulu? Tuvok has a battle, a debilitating childhood memory, and Captain Janeway enters his mind via mind meld, because Tuvok mind melds with anyone and everyone who walks, and it transports them back to the USS Excelsior with Captain Sulu, drops them right in the middle of that movie. And like I said, we discover what he was doing while his friends were on trial. This was the 30th anniversary of Star Trek. This was their episode that they did on Voyager to celebrate the 30th anniversary of Star Trek. And it's cool to see Sulu and Yeoman Rand. She's back in it. You would never know that that's her though, if you didn't know the actress's name. But what do you think, Phil? Is this a necessary? You gotta watch this one or not?
So I've got to say yes, just because of the Tuvok backstory. It fills in this huge gap. I don't know if it's been mentioned before, if I just know it from other stuff, but knowing that Tuvok served in Starfleet, left for 50 years, comes back, serves again, but to know he served with Sulu and the whole situation, for me, it's a yes. I mean, a lot of people will say, oh yeah, he's going to mind meld with somebody again. Here we go.
Right.
But to get those flashbacks, it just kind of the nostalgia and to fill in more of Tuvok's backstory. I think it's hard to say no to this one for me.
I hear you, but is there anything, but is there anything in his backstory, the serving with Starfleet and all of that we don't get in a future episode, that they're not like, hey, I used to do this, and Matt would be like, oh, okay, you got it there. Like, is there anything that's pertinent out of this particular episode? Because I love seeing Sulu and the magic of dropping them in the movie as if he was there when they filmed it the first time. Like, that's super cool. They got all those guys back. I think it's definitely at least an extra viewing for me, but this is that first one I had a question mark on because it is a big episode, you know?
Yeah, I could see having it as an extra instead of for sure yes. Because of that. I mean, the stuff that happens doesn't really affect the storyline going forward per se.
Okay, let me ask you this.
The only thing that was sticking with me was for character development. But even that, it's still not really, it doesn't come up again in the future.
Yeah.
His experience with Captain Sulu or anything. So right. I think nostalgia may be overtaking anything that's pertinent.
That's the tough part about the seat is going. Okay, let me ask you this, because here's the other side. Is there, and Voyager gets back to this in a way that Deep Space Nine doesn't actually do a ton. It does, but not as much as say TNG did or even TOS. Is there some big like moral, some message that the producers are trying to teach us through this particular episode? Or is this, hey, it's just cool to see Tuvok's backstory in Sulu? Like, is it just, cool is it fan service?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I think so.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. As much as I hate to do it, I'm gonna keep this one on extra viewing because that's where I originally had it. But this was one like I remember going back rewatching it. Like I watched the full episode, just going, please give me something I can do because it feels like you should. It almost feels dirty not to. But
it's like, oh, how are you gonna do Sulu like that?
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, I'm with you. You've convinced me to push it to the next.
I will say this just for the record: there is no limit or minimum number of episodes from each season we're doing. So if we get to the end and there's only four episodes we're doing, there's only 4. If there's 12, then we'll do 12. Typically, I find we're in that 8-ish category, give or take 1 or 2. That's typically where I find we are. But you know, like I said, we'll take it for what it's worth.
That's pretty good. That's still a third of the season you're watching. So
it is. And when you consider they're producing 24, 26 episodes a season. Yeah.
Well, welcome to the 90s network television. We're churning out episodes.
I was going to say, I just started to do series with my son on Netflix, and it's 5 episodes, the whole season. Like,
and then you have to wait 2 years to get the next season.
Probably. And it's only half-hour episodes. I'm like, what in the world? Yeah.
Cash that paycheck. That's awesome.
Right. All right, episode 3, The Shoot. Lieutenant Paris and Kim are suspected of being members of an open sky terrorist group, and Neelix is asked to use his ship on a special mission. They're trapped below ground in a prison with only a chute to get out, but the food comes down, so you don't want to get it dirty.
Ew.
What do you think?
So this is going to be probably the easiest one. It's a good story that I enjoy watching, but it's a no for sure. This is a bunch of reworked leftovers from season 2 ideas that were floating around in the writer's room. And again, while I like the story and I can watch it no problem.
Sure.
Is it essential? Not even close. Nope.
Yeah.
It doesn't do anything. It's a total bottle episode.
Is it a skip or is it an extra viewing? Because I like this episode. I watch it whenever it's on.
I do too, but unless you're doing a full rewatch, I think it's a skip.
Okay, fair enough.
I mean, this never comes up again.
Uh-huh.
We never hear about it again. It's a great story. Like I said, I like watching it.
Right.
But nah.
So, this reminds me of something, and I think this episode's an interesting look at it. I have come to this, I'm formulating a theory right now about Voyager as a series, that like, if you think of series in terms of like what their genre was, Voyager is like, to me, turning out to be more of the horror series of all of Star Trek. Now, I know people would think Deep Space Nine because it's darker and it's all this, but like, think about what they do in Voyager and the monsters,
some of the stuff that they encounter. Yeah.
Scary clowns. They encountered scary clowns in a dream, and the people being taken over, and just like, we're gonna go warp 10 to get home, but turn into space.
There's a lot of mind control stuff that happens. There's
it's like a horror. Like it's, I mean, Suitor, the whole meld thing and all that, like murder people and people.
Where in Starfleet have we had just like a cold-blooded killer in Starfleet?
Yeah.
Andy's Betazoid.
Right.
It's like, oh.
And then you got Tuvix and everything going on with Tuvix, and like, oh my gosh. And I mean, it's just, and the thaw. Oh my God. Anyway.
Yeah. I like your theory.
Anyway, deadly missile from the Alpha Quadrant that somehow B'Elanna programmed, which come on. Stop it.
I'll probably say this 5 or 10 times. We run into an unexpected amount of people / things from the Alpha Quadrant out here in the middle of nowhere.
Right. I can understand the whole thing with Seven and her parents when we get to that. I can understand, maybe I can even understand the Ferengi when that one comes up. Maybe. But Amelia Earhart is where I drew the line. Like, no. Remember the truck, like later, it's like season 6 or 7, the truck floating in space. No.
They pull it into the shuttle bay and it fires right up.
Right.
Tom all of a sudden is a master 20th century mechanic, and he put it in the clutch and pop it a little bit and
yeah. Oh, Captain, my favorite era was 1994 to 2000. It was great.
It's just beautiful. How convenient, especially when we get transported back there. Oh wait, that's coming.
Right.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah. All right. Well, episode 4, before we get there, Voyager's crew fights off alien vessels. Meanwhile, the Doctor's memory begins to fail, and they have to activate the diagnostic tool to wind up expanding the Doctor's program. And we discuss whether or not the Doctor is sentient. So what do you think about it? The aliens notwithstanding, this has to be all about the Doctor. What about the swarm?
Sure. The swarm is just kind of the mechanism. It's not, this is a total A plot, B plot episode.
Right.
And the Doctor's character development and how much he's expanded his program is causing it to decay. I put it extra with a question mark on my list by this episode, because while it does push the Doctor's character forward and you see his development and the way he's expanding all of these programs and his personality is coming out. Is it enough to make it, you've got to watch this? I've got a hard time justifying it. And again, it's another one. Good storyline. I enjoyed the episode. Is the Doctor's, what he's going through, enough? I mean, Robert Picardo does an amazing job in here, both as the Doctor and as Dr. Zimmerman. And I love both characters, and the way the diagnostic tool sacrifices itself to make sure the Doctor can stay online. It's good. Is it good enough? I don't know.
See, when doing these shows, I've discovered we tend to like we'll pick a character or two, and not intentionally, it just sort of happens that you go, this is the character you follow, because we're not going to follow all 7 of them or 8 of them, whatever the show is. Like we kind of you got to follow this to understand really the implication of what happens to them later. Next Generations, for some reason, tended to be about Worf and a lot about Data. It was those two guys, kind of a juxtaposition. Again, didn't mean to, but we got everybody else, except for Geordi. We somehow left Geordi out in the cold the entire show.
Yeah, he only had like 1 or 2 episodes. Yeah.
Right. But this is one of those where we start talking about, there's the idea of the Doctor's programming beginning to expand, because I think so far we've kind of missed that through the run with Matt, is this Doctor who's gone from super cold, just a program, and we're watching this journey, and especially as this juxtaposes against Seven and her journey later, where it's basically the two outsiders looking in on humanity, trying to figure out what this is. Later on in the season, when we get to the episode Real Life, where the Doctor gets his own family, we'll talk about that one in a bit. But that one and this one are kind of in that same vein of watching the Doctor again develop. Like we're seeing it happen with what he's become, because I think this is the episode where we get the singing. All of a sudden the Doctor starts singing opera for some reason, and Kes comes to his aid, and it's like it's that whole, he is what makes him alive is the sum total of his experience, and you can't just reset him. Like is this Measure of a Man? Because you have to watch Measure of a Man in Next Generation. Is this Measure of a Man for Voyager? That's where I go, because I had this in the watch category, but I'm not strong on it. I got to be honest with you. Like, I could be talked out of this one for sure.
I'm not either, because later in the season we'll have the episode where the Doctor creates his own family on the holodeck. Right. And so the Doctor's growth through the season is something we see several times. So I don't know how many episodes you need to watch to hit on that to be like, oh yeah, okay, the Doctor's program is growing and growing, and his character is developing.
Sure.
So it's like, is it going to become redundant then?
Yeah. Now it occurs to me, to go back to our conversation from earlier in the episode before we started this, where we started talking about how Voyager and Deep Space Nine are complementing each other. So we see Dr. Zimmerman in this episode. It's later in this same season over on Deep Space Nine where Dr. Zimmerman pops up, and we find out that Dr. Bashir is a genetically modified human. So like, as soon as we there's this
GMO human.
There's this, we've now met Dr. Zimmerman, and he pops up later as Dr. Zimmerman, like the real guy, Dr. Zimmerman later.
The actual guy.
Yeah. Could you do one without the other? Absolutely. Do you need to see Dr. Zimmerman here as a hologram to know who he is later on? No, you absolutely don't. But
and we'll see Dr. Zimmerman later in Voyager as well.
We do
as part of Pathfinder.
Oh, that's right.
With Barclay and Deanna, they go to his lab.
Right. Is that where he's dying and the Doctor wants to go save him? They ship the Doctor.
Yeah, they ship the Doctor through the data stream to try and diagnose and save his life.
Didn't we have that same episode in TNG with Data going to Dr. Soong when he was dying?
Shut your mouth. We don't recycle plot lines, okay?
Oh, okay. Pretty sure we watched that episode. We did.
And funny enough, we just, on Nerd Trek podcast, we just rewatched that episode. Yeah, with the Data getting recalled and Dr. Soong dying.
Speaking of that,
Lore takes care of him, so.
This absolutely floored me. Do you know how many episodes we had of Lore in total throughout all Next Generation?
Oh, it's like 4. It's not very many.
And one of them was a 2-parter.
Yeah.
Where he didn't come in until the very end of the first episode. So he really is
only
one
of the most impactful characters in the storyline.
The whole thing. Yeah. Oh my God. Like, could not have imagined that. Anyway. Okay. So all right, I'm going to move the Swarm to extra viewing because there is some meat to it, but it's not necessarily have to watch. Like,
no, the only thing else I will throw in here that may or may not change your viewpoint is this is also the beginning of Tom and B'Elanna's relationship too. When they're on board the space shuttle, they get some flirting in there, and they're kind of needling each other a little bit. And this is the beginning of
that's right.
Them, like,
it's the first hint, because there's that like it's the cold open, right? Like where there's bantering back and like she shuts them down hardcore, right?
But the way she does it, it's like, oh, there's something bubbling here,
right? Because we'll talk about it when we get to the episode Blood Fever. That's actually what I had there was Tom and B'Elanna more than the whole Parn Far thing, which I think is hilarious to revisit. But it's the Tom and B'Elanna, and it really sets the stage for their relationship going forward. Because I tell you what, we're going to skip over altogether, at least as far as I'm concerned, is anything that is any hint of Tom and Kes, because that was just was a no-go for me from the beginning. Dude, she's 2. Let it go.
Exactly. Yeah. That's why the Neelix and Kes episodes, the Tom and Kes episodes, I'm like, no, y'all need to back up. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I can't do this.
Yeah. And we'll get, there's a Kes episode later we'll have to talk about. But for now, let's talk about some Ferengi, Phil. In an episode called False Prophets, Voyager discovers a pair of Ferengi who control the economy of a primitive world. Nearby is an unstable wormhole that leads them back to home. Isn't this a callback to a Next Generation episode? Like, we saw these 2 Ferengi like disappear into a wormhole, and like this is what happened to them.
This is
not that
this
anybody
is probably the best.
that.
This is probably the best episode that I'm going to say no to from this whole season. The Price was the TNG episode where they got shipped through the wormhole.
That's right.
And to see them pop up here I remember the first time I saw this, it about floored me. And I immediately remember pointing at the screen and I was screaming, oh my God, it's the Ferengi. They're back. They found them. So while it's a great story and it is hilarious, it's a no.
We missed the price back in TNG, so Matt has no idea who these guys are going to be anyway. But I'm going to go with no. I am going to keep this in extra viewing. I'm with you. It doesn't impact.
But you have to link the two. If he's gonna watch this one, he needs to watch the price from TNG.
Okay, fair enough.
They're totally 100% linked.
I will tell you, for the last 4 months, Matt has chosen all Ferengi episodes for his extra viewings.
Oh, Ferengi
for the last 4 months, he has fallen in love with the Ferengi. So maybe he'll pick this episode as his extra viewing. He would dig it. It's great. Doesn't Neelix get cosmetically altered to look like a Ferengi as well?
To be the Grand Nagus. Yeah, who's trying to recall them and whatever. Yeah,
which is great because Ethan Phillips has done Ferengi on TNG before. Like it's not his first time in that makeup. So
it's so good. Just to see them pop up, you're like, what?
Yeah, right. Exactly. All right. So
this is the one I'm definitely the strongest on. If he's going to watch this, definitely needs to watch the price.
All right. Well, let's I'm going to make that note with the price from TNG.
And the price itself is a great episode.
You know, we skipped it. I honestly don't remember it off the top of my head. I'm going to have to go back and watch it myself. So
it's one of those kind of like middle of season 3 episodes where I could see how you could go buy it.
Yeah. We didn't do much Ferengi hardly at all in Next Generation, which to me was fine because we were going to catch up with it in Deep Space Nine, and they were going to change the Ferengi anyway by Deep Space Nine. So, I was fine not to mix that in. But that being said, let's move on to our next episode, Remember. B'Elanna Torres receives vivid dreams from an unknown passenger aboard Voyager. Ooh, again, it's the horror series because this one's a little freaky, but still, I've got this one on skip. Phil, how about you?
Yeah, I'm a skip on this one as well. You may be able to throw it in as an extra because of some of the stuff it does to B'Elanna, but it never comes up again. This was a pretty easy skip.
All right. I don't have to talk long about skips. Next episode, Sacred Ground. Yeah. It's a Kess episode, and we all love Kess episodes, don't we? How do you feel? How'd you feel about Kess? Seriously, how'd you feel about Kess as a character?
I wish they would have focused more on her study and work with the Doctor.
Yeah.
And how fast she picked up just her mental abilities to be able to understand complex medical procedures and technology,
right,
and retain it. Because even going back to the Swarm, when the Doctor is starting to lose all of his cognitive stuff, and she's immediately there like, oh yeah, you do this and this and this as they're going through some of the medical stuff. I wish they'd focused on more of that with Kess. I wasn't terribly sad to see her go.
Right.
But I did like the Doctor relationship, and then her relationship with Tuvok, with Tuvok, and kind of how he helped her with her mental discipline, and her skills, her telepathic skills. It was really interesting.
I agree. I don't like Kess as a character, but I don't think it's because of the way Jennifer Lean played her. I think it's because of the way the writers wrote her. Actually,
Jennifer Lean was a good actress. Yeah. It was all the writers.
Yeah, to be fair, I think they kept her I didn't love her performance as Kess. It always seemed very bland and blasé. But those few episodes where she had the long hair, I thought she was really good at it. And I was like, oh, we could do something with this character. But I really wish they would have explored the super fast growth of an Ocampa, because she should have gone from like a 10-year-old or like a 15-year-old to like a 35-year-old just in the time we had with her.
Just in a couple of seasons.
You know what I mean? And she didn't. She just sort of stayed the same the whole way. So I'm like, she got 9 years and we spent a third of it with her. Like, we should see a lot more growth.
And all we saw was the change from a pixie cut to her long hair.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It just, I wish
there's a lot of characters across all the series where you can kind of say it, but the writers kind of did her dirty.
They did. With her character. Yeah, they really did. And you know what? I think it was good of them to go, we just can't do anything with this character, and to because people will say with they want to say about Seven. Objectively, the 7 of 9 character is one of the most interesting characters in all of Star Trek. What it is to go from a Borg back into a human and exploring that. It could have been a dude. It could have been a non-binary person. It could have been anybody. And it would have been just as interesting to me because of that whole deal. And actually, I say it's Seven and the Voyager are 2 of the top 3 most interesting characters throughout all of Star Trek to me. So
yeah, I would have a hard time arguing with that.
Yeah. So anyway, this episode is a Kes episode. Kes is injured when she accidentally commits sacrilege on an alien planet, and in order to save her life, Janeway has to go through a mysterious ritual that challenges her faith in science.
Yeah. Okay. You say so. Yeah, I'm not a fan of it.
Yeah.
It's the way they linked with B'Elanna kind of did more for me. I'm sorry. That wasn't for this one. I'm not a fan of this episode. Robert Duncan McNeil, this is the first episode of Voyager that he directed.
Yep.
And usually when you have the stars directing episodes, they're pretty good. But I wasn't a fan of the whole, hey, you violated our sacred god, now you've just got to die kind of thing.
Yeah.
This is a recycled plot line from almost every series, I think, that's happened. And yeah, I didn't like it when they did it on TNG with Wesley stepping on the wrong grass. Don't care that they did it here with Kes. This is a pass for me.
Yeah. This felt more like an episode that belonged in Deep Space Nine than it did Voyager.
Oh yeah, if they did something like this with the prophets and something had happened.
Yeah, you sent the script to the wrong cast. Like it should have been over there. I personally like this episode. It just feels weird and it just doesn't fit. Like I can watch this episode, but I don't like. I certainly don't. I don't love it. Like it's not whatever. So I'm gonna put this one in skip because there's really not much worth talking. I don't want Matt to choose this one for an extra viewing. There's too many other good episodes. But I'll put it over and skip. All right, next.
And he would be confused. He'd be like, "What is going on?"
Exactly. All right, the next one's gonna be a 2-parter. Future's End, parts 1 and 2. After encountering a Federation time ship from the future, Voyager is sent back to 1996 because that's when they made this episode on Earth. And in the process, Janeway is trying to prevent a guy named Henry Starling from launching a time ship without altering the past. And the Doctor gets his mobile emitter, and Sarah Silverman's a part of Star Trek. Go figure.
Apparently, yeah.
And we get to see Tom with a cool fanny pack. I don't know how we missed this episode. I really don't. But what do we think? Future's End. Let's talk about it.
Man, there's so much going on in this 2-parter that I'm a fan of. I have it marked down as a yes because it's a 2-parter and so much is going on. Is it corny at times? Absolutely. Is there some weird stuff happening at times? Absolutely. But sometimes that's what makes up the heart of really good episodes.
Right.
And there's enough happening. I mean, just the Doctor getting his emitter alone is almost reason enough to watch this.
Right.
Because without this foundation, the next 4 seasons are not going to make any sense.
Right.
It's like all of a sudden the Doctor's walking around the halls and they're like, "What? How did this happen?"
Right.
So
I can see
that
me
alone is.
I can see me trying to explain this to Matt, that like he'll be watching and okay, Matt, so there's this piece of tech from like 400 years into the future that's a mobile emitter that the Doctor can now use and he can go anywhere he wants. And the reason they got that is because a chip from the future appeared in the past and it sent Voyager back to 1996 and they got to walk around in 1996 LA. And
They went to the Griffith Observatory and
like our litmus test is
30 seconds, right?
30 seconds or less, right? Like if you can't do it. And then doesn't this one lead into the episode? Shoot.
Yes, it does.
From like season 5, right?
Well. It goes forward.
which is a fantastic episode,
which is amazing.
Braxton. It's Braxton. Yeah. He comes back, right? Yeah. It's kind of like the next one after this. So yeah. So we will watch this one. This one will go in the watch list. So that puts us with Basics 1 and 2 and then Futures. Oh wow. That is 2-parters to start the show. Or to start the season. Yeah, now we're gonna follow that up because right after this is where First Contact goes in. We don't have to discuss it, but I'll give you a chance. What are your thoughts on the movie? It's a TNG movie, First Contact.
Well, I'm a fan of all the TNG movies, so it's hard for me.
Yeah.
I love First Contact. It's great. It's fun. It covers history and a lot of canon stuff. It's great. I mean, Deanna gets blasted on tequila or whiskey or whatever they're drinking. Right. It's great.
Yeah.
So yeah, for me, I'm a fan. It's one of those you've got to watch. You got to watch First Contact.
You do. We meet the Borg Queen for the first time. We have that whole deal going on, which we've never met the Queen before now. Like we don't have this hive, like Queen of the Hive thing at all. We've never introduced that. I mean, this fundamentally changes who the Borg are.
And Alice Krieg is great as the Borg Queen.
Absolutely.
She nails it.
Turns out it's an important plot point for Voyager going forward. So you have to watch it there.
Funny
you get the new
enough,
Enterprise. We get the new Enterprise in this one. Geordi gets his fun little eye attachments in this
his
one.
eyeballs done.
Data can switch his emotion chip finally off and on and deal with that.
Tiny little life forms. Yeah,
exactly.
Sure.
You know, now and obvious. So we watched Generations. We're gonna watch First Contact. Let me preempt this a little bit. I think obviously we have to watch Nemesis because it has so much impact on Picard and it has impacts. I mean, it just has, it's Data and his death, and people can say what they want. I actually think Nemesis is much better than people give it credit for. But what about Insurrection? Is Insurrection a watcher?
To me, they're all watchers, but I don't know if it's necessarily.
I don't know. I think it was Frakes' last movie.
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, I don't. It's kind of a. Would I watch it? Sure.
Yeah.
Would I make somebody else watch it if I was trying to get them into Trek? Don't know.
Okay. Well, this isn't about Insurrection or the TNG movies. This is about Voyager season 3. So let's get back to Voyager season 3. And our next episode 10 for the season, is Warlord Kes is taken over by the mind force of an obsessive rebel. Talk about Jennifer Lean proving she's a good actress, because she's really good in this episode.
When you give her material, she handles it.
Exactly.
And her character in this, it almost reminds me of like a Mirror Universe kind of episode. Just with the 180 her character takes when she gets taken over.
Sure.
It's a really strong episode. Is it good enough to make somebody watch it? If they're a Kes fan, I might include it as an extra.
Yeah.
But if they're kind of shying away from Kes anyways, I don't know whether I'd subject them to it.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm with you. This
episode is great.
It's a good episode, but it's a skip for me on this series, because frankly, I'm just not investing in Kes. Like, knowing where the Kes storyline goes, and we only have so many episodes we can do, I'm just not investing much in Kes. So
I'm that way too. It's one I won't skip if I'm watching it.
Yeah.
But for somebody else, and we get another friggin' mind meld with Tuvok and Kes.
Dude, I'm telling you, I say it all the time. Tuvok's a mind meld whore. He really is. Dude, for what mind melds are supposed to be, he mind melds with everybody. If you got two legs, he's gonna mind meld with you. And he is no respecter of persons. He doesn't matter who you are.
He doesn't care. He doesn't care.
Yeah. He is a pan melder. Pan melder. There you go.
There we go. How do you identify pan meld?
There you go. I like it. That's our new t-shirt. We need to make that t-shirt. I'm a pan melder. All right. Well, moving on. The next episode, The Q and the Gray. This is actually a follow-up to our episode that we did on Death Wish. We did do the episode Death Wish. That's the one where the Voyager crew releases another Q who wants to commit suicide, and our beloved John Delancey Q shows up, and they have a big trial, and he actually winds up like helping him commit suicide at the very end. And we go to visit the Continuum. Yeah, Quinn and all of that. So this is kind of a follow-up to that. But basically in this one, it's a Civil War story, which is we go back to the Continuum, and that's the way that it's shown to us so we can understand what's happening. There's a Civil War happening in the Continuum. And basically, in order to solve it, they determine that Q needs a baby, and he wants Janeway to be his baby mama.
Yeah. It's an interesting one. And especially if you guys watch the first one, this is definitely a yes. I'm typically not a big Q fan.
Yeah.
In TNG, Delancey is great. I'll be more than happy to see him in Picard next season when it comes out. But it's kind of like, I don't know, pick your favorite drug. A little dabble do ya?
Right.
Sometimes too much Q, it just overloads. But in this episode, it's great. And having Susie Plaskin back from TNG and others, she played Kalar.
Right. Worf's baby mama. She's quite
Worf's
Q's baby mama and Worf's baby mama.
Exactly. but she's an awesome actress, especially in the Trek world.
Mm-hmm.
So to see her back and just some of the scenes, you get the typical Q comic relief in there. Watching them conceive in that final scene is great. They're like,
yeah, all right, we're done.
Like, oh, it was fantastic. Yeah, right. That was great. Like, here's your cigarette. Like, that's all I was missing.
I would actually want to watch. I want to be with Matt when he watches this episode. Like, yeah, we're gonna mate right now. I just want to see him like, oh. Like, I want to see
just a little glow of light. Like,
right.
There you go. But yeah, some of the comedic relief when Q can't figure out why Janeway doesn't want to be his baby mama. He's like, well, I don't know what you see in Chakotay, and he comes out with this giant Maori tattoo on the side of his face and just takes up 3/4 of it. It seems like that really make the episode. But I mean, there is a storyline under here. What's going on in the continuum still. So it's kind of continuing that arc and what it's taking to quell the civil war that's going on. So yeah, I like this one.
I like this one a lot. Here's my question.
I feel a butt coming on.
No, it's not a butt because I like this episode. I am a Q fan. I think Q is at his best when he's doing he's up to mischief, but in the end, he's actually helping you, like in Tapestry or Q Who or, something like that. Like he's helping you, but he's not. And then like, even in all good things, like when you get to the end of it and he's like, yeah, you're back on trial. You're on trial. And he gets to the end. And he's like, see, you're actually more than what you think you are, but he doesn't ever come out and be like the moral of today's story. He's never that guy. Right.
Yeah.
But these episodes they're just kind of him. Here's my question. Do I play a little bit of shenanigans? Because we come back, I think it's not until season 7 where we actually meet the baby, which is actually John Delancey's real life son, played by his real life son, Keegan, I think it is.
Nice trivia.
Yeah. Is there something to saving this episode? And then when we get to that in season 7, saying, okay, Matt, we're going to smush this together as a 2-parter and go back and watch it? Or is it just a watch now and then we'll catch up with it later in season 7?
I think there's enough here that it's a watch now.
Okay.
And then that'll be a nice little carrot towards the end of the series when you get Q back again.
Okay.
Instead of jamming them all together.
All right. I like it.
Yeah.
I like Q and the Great. This is one I kind of had the question mark on, like, is it really enough? But I do like it. I'm going to easily be talked into it.
Yeah. Initially I had it a yes with the parentheses, if you like Q.
Right.
But now the more that I'm reliving it again, it's like, yeah, it's a really good episode, especially as part of that 3-episode arc.
There is that arc. If these episodes all came in one season, I don't care where like I would totally push them together as one episode, but they don't. They come throughout the course of the series. So, yeah, we'll do that.
Yeah, and they're fairly far spread apart too. So
they are. They very much are.
It'll be a nice carrot in a couple of seasons for them.
All right. Well, moving on, episode 12, Macrocosm. Janeway is the baddest ass, most badass captain there is when she goes full on Rambo on a bug. What do you think? Is this view worthy? Is it worthy of one of the precious few spots that we have? Or am I going to drop this to extra viewing? Because I won't just skip it, but what do you think?
So I'm okay with it being an extra viewing.
Yeah.
Is it a yes must watch? I just can't justify it. It's like we've got other episodes where we shrink things. Now we've got this one where we make things bigger. Right. It's like, come on, guys. We're kind of recycling plot line, or at least the idea there. So I'm like, you could go back and watch Rascals from the Next Generation if you want to see something shrunk, or One Little Ship in Deep Space Nine, or there's even an animated series episode where they're shrunk down. So to see kind of the reverse, the idea is good and I like it. Just watching them trying to hack up these giant microbes that just like taking up the size of your face kind of thing. It's a great idea. I enjoy the episode. I don't think it's a must watch. I'm totally fine with it being an extra.
Yeah, I'm going to leave it an extra. Although, I mean, I often say, and I say Janeway's my favorite of all the captains. I say she's the mama bear. Like, you mess with her people and she goes ape crap over you.
She goes from 0 to 100 fast.
Yeah. Like I mean, like Cisco has that special brand of crazy that gets into him when somebody does something to that he doesn't want them to do. He'll let a lot of stuff slide. Like he does, like he's not Picard. Picard's as straight and narrow as you could possibly be. But Janeway, and like there's even a t-shirt. Like I think I saw Kate Mulgrew wearing it. That's just a silhouette of Janeway holding the phaser you know, the phaser rifle without her captain's jacket on.
Yeah,
you know, it just,
that scene, I think that scene is in Act 2 where she goes to the weapons storage locker and rips off her tunic. She's like sticks a knife in her pocket. She's got a handheld phaser, the phaser rifle. She's strapped and ready.
I just need to see her put like a bandana around her head and maybe put some eye black on. Yeah, exactly. Oh my gosh.
I can see like a little strap across her chest with just power cells in it.
There she can. Oh yeah. Exactly.
That'd be great.
Maybe some flashbang grenades as he throws out there.
Yeah.
But don't forget the weird flashlight that's on your wrist that you got to hold your hand at a weird angle to throw out.
The double flashlight.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's better than the Deep Space Nine flashlight, which is like a box you got to hold. Like, you know.
Yeah. Like what are you supposed to do here?
That's truly one of those where I go, you know what? The flashlight we've invented with a handle is still the best flashlight.
It's still superior.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like
24th century engineering cannot outdo a flashlight with a handle.
No, it's just
give me a good mag light I can beat something up with.
It's like you're not going to improve on the fork. You know, like the fork and the spoon, they're the two perfect utensils. Yeah. They're just, you know.
Can't do it. Yeah.
Anyway. All right, moving on then. This one's going to extra viewing. Next episode, this one we may have some discussion on fair trade. Neelix comes up upon the Necrid Expanse, a place that once he crosses this path, it'll be the furthest he's ever gone away from home, Mr. Frodo, if he takes one more step. And Neelix questions his place on the ship. And actually, as you referenced earlier, Janeway is all like, but you're part of a family now, Neelix, and you have so much more to offer than just your knowledge of the space. What do we think? Is this a watch? Does this hit that Star Trek message, that Roddenberry type thing that we got going on, even though it's an Neelix episode?
Yeah, even though it's an Neelix episode, I would say yes. It's the first of a 3-part arc, I believe, covering the Necrid Expanse. And yeah, this is Neelix's episode. He's getting put to the test. Mm-hmm. Like, okay, we're here. You've got nothing else. You don't know what's coming. You got nothing else to offer this crew, but they're keeping you on because you're part of this crew. And it's great to see in future episodes how Neelix is like trying different things and like what can I do? What am I good at? What's going on? Mm-hmm. But yeah, it shows his relationship with his friend Bix, which is really interesting, and how he's kind of divided loyalties between the ship and his friend, and then him stealing or trying to buy the map so that he can continue to be a benefit, in quotes, to Voyager still. And that whole realization that it's not necessary. Him being him and doing what he does is what they've come to expect and what they need, really. So for me, this is
I love the message of this, that you being you is all that you need to be. You don't have to be something more than just what, like, you are valuable not because of what you offer, but just because of who you are. And you're a valued part of this family, of this crew, of this group of people, just because of who you are, not because of what you bring to the table. And actually turns out Neelix brings a lot more to the table than just his knowledge of the space. So
he doesn't even realize it.
Exactly. Yeah. I think this one also gives us that plus this really pushes that idea of Voyager is moving through space, where, you know, it helps us with that just a little bit as well. At this point, we will have left the D in space. We have left the Kazons, and this really helps that idea of getting shit. Now, I don't think I realized that the Necrid Expanse was a story arc, but I guess it is, isn't it?
Yeah, it covers several episodes because of how big it is.
I just don't think I ever realized that they were still in the Necrid Expanse all those episodes later. But yeah, I mean, I think it goes all the way to the end of the season, doesn't it? To
this one,
reptile one.
Blood Fever is part 2, and then Unity is part 3. So it takes 5 episodes to get there, I guess.
Wow.
But yeah,
but isn't the Distant Origin, the one with the dinosaurs who think they're the foundation of the people of the world universe, they're like the end of the Necrid Expanse, I think it is. If memory serves, I could be wrong. I just don't I never put that together that was like an underlying story arc, but that's cool, because I was thinking about that the other day of like, Matt's gonna ask me, he's like, whoa, there's supposed to be this big expanse, and I got through it in one episode. I'm like,
not quite.
Not really. Anyway.
Yeah, not quite.
All right. So we'll keep this one in the viewing. I like, this is one that my initial reaction was it's not necessary. But when I watched it back and I thought about it, I was like, actually, I think this one might be. I think this gives us a lot of good stuff.
And I don't know, there's also a scene which kind of marks the end of the Kes and Neelix relationship, And I don't know if that scene is only on the Blu-ray special edition or if it made it into like the Netflix cut of
Was
the
it
episode.
this episode where they broke up?
It is.
Is it?
Yeah, it's a real fast. It's just a couple of lines. No matter what happens, I'll always love you and care for you, like that kind of thing. I don't know if, and there we get another one in a couple of episodes, I think.
Yeah.
But there was one here, and I don't know if it just made it into the Blu-ray edition.
Interesting.
And didn't make it into the broadcast edition, or which way that went. I didn't get far enough in Netflix to see if it was there or not.
I wonder if there's like, is there like, because there's the Paramount Plus version too. Like, does Paramount Plus have it and Netflix doesn't, or something like that? So
trying to figure out which edits, and because there's been a couple of those episodes where there's like, oh yeah, there's this scene that sometimes you get to see, sometimes you don't.
It's like the giant octopus at the end of Goonies. Like sometimes he's there and sometimes he's not.
Sometimes he's there, sometimes he's not. Yep.
Interesting. So fun little Brent fact. For those of you out there who know my story, I've often talked about, there was a girl who introduced me to Star Trek, and she was the one who was like, hey, you should watch Voyager because it has this overarching thing. And that's how I got into Star Trek, was I was watching it with her. And years later, she went away out of my life, and I eventually met the girl who would be my wife, and we eventually got married. And right after we got married, we were trying to decide what to watch like together as a couple. And I was like, you know what, you should watch Star Trek. She's never watched Star Trek. And she's like, okay, fine. But, I was like, you know what you should do is just start with Voyager because it has this overarching theme. And so she watched it. And I say all the time, like, the girl was gone, but Star Trek remained, right? But with that girl, so back up a little bit, with that girl after we broke up, I think I remember watching this episode and hearing Neelix say that, like you'll always be in my heart. And little grown up Brent, I was like I was going to say that to her, like, I'll always love you. You'll always be in my heart. And there was something that stopped me. I was like, I don't want to always love you. Like when I do find that girl who's actually going to say yes and all that kind of stuff, I don't want to like still have a part of it pining for you.
Yeah. Why have that doubt back there? Yeah.
And I was like, Neelix, dude, don't do that, man. Neelix, no, don't. No. Save your dude. She broke up with you. Let it go, man. It's good. It's all good. Anyway,
you've got 132 other potential partners on this ship.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe.
Is that how many who's left alive now? How many torpedoes?
Yeah, 132 is the official count. There's 12 people that have died so far.
All right. There we go.
Two that they brought on. Yeah.
Well, let's keep going.
As of season 3, at least.
There we go. Alter Ego, episode 14. Tuvok and Harry Kim are interested in the same holodeck character who is more than she seems. Directed by Bob Picardo by coincidence. Coincidence.
And unfortunately, my rule of cast members directing episodes, again, it's a good episode. I like watching it, but it's a retold trope. It's somebody falls in love with a holodeck character. This case, they're an alien. Sometimes it's somebody who turns out to be sentient, whatever. This one's a no for me.
I got to be honest with you. I've seen it. I'm a completionist multiple times. Okay. It's not really 47. That's just a joke, but I have seen every episode multiple times on all of Star Trek. I never remember this episode. I'm sitting here looking at it right now.
One, huh?
Yeah. I know that I watched this episode recently, and the only reason I know what it is because I recently watched it, but I don't really remember what happened in this episode.
I think we all have those. After 800 episodes, there's a couple of that sneak up in there and you're like, oh, or you're like, huh?
Yeah, no, I don't even have a memory of this episode. It's not like, oh yeah, it's that one. Okay.
Nothing there.
Nothing there. Just, did I miss this episode before? I guess not. I don't know.
Like a bonus episode for you.
Yeah, exactly. All right.
Well, that shows how much of an impression it made.
Yeah. So we're going to skip this one and we'll move on. Coda is our next episode.
I do like the Hawaiian shirts that they get to wear at the beach club.
Oh, that's this one where we get the new holodeck space. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm glad that didn't stick around very long.
A Big Daddy-O surf special Hawaiian shirt is what Tom describes it as.
Oh my.
Because it's from the 60s and he's an expert on apparently everything ancient.
There you go.
On Earth.
There you go. Well, speaking of episodes that might actually belong on Deep Space Nine, after her apparent death, Captain Janeway's journey to the afterlife, guided by her father, leaves her with suspicions. Is it really what's going on? What do we think? Is this worthy of one of those precious few spots in the watch list?
It's a no from me, dog. It could be an extra. Again, the episode is fine, but the alien is trying to convince her to come to the other side so that he can feast on her energy, or whatever you want to call it.
Right.
Katra, I don't know, whatever.
Right.
It's interesting, and the title is appropriate. Coda, it's the same thing keeps happening over and over. But for me, it's not an essential. We get a little bit of Janeway. It's nice to see her dad, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, and the whole thing with the Vidians is kind of interesting too. But again, it's not pushing a storyline really. It's not doing anything for the character. So.
No. I'm going to keep this in skip. I'm not even going to put this in extra viewing. It doesn't do anything. Not for me. It's not fun. So with that, let's talk about Blood Fever, an episode that I think on the surface is at best an extra viewing, but there is a moment at the end that is a turning moment for the entire series. But there's also some relationship, right? But it takes 2 seconds of screen time. But there's also foundational relationship stuff that really starts right here in this episode. But we get the return of the Ponfar. This episode is Blood Fever. Lana Torres experiences symptoms similar to the Ponfar after being attacked by Ensign Vorik, who initiates a mind meld with her, because that's what we do on Voyagers. We mind meld with everybody, who is also undergoing the Blood Fever. It's a callback to the Ponfar episode from the original series, which I always dig. And it's hilarious. The Ponfar is okay. I'm sorry. I don't think I realized in the search for Spock, when Spock comes back to life and Lieutenant Savick is like, yeah, there's only one thing that can help him out here. And like, she goes away and like comes back like a week later. And now she's like particularly pregnant, because they've just been,
what happened
that much, that fast. Like,
it's magic.
Wow. That's talk about propagating the species, man.
That's right.
That'll get it. But anyway, this episode, what do we think? Is it a watch? Is it a watch, or is this an extra viewing? Where do we go with it?
I've got to say yes, because of the final scene where we see the Borg skeleton in the jungle.
Yeah. And
it's Tom Ablana's first kiss.
It's there. And there's the true, like, I know you like me, I know you don't, and all of this stuff. Let me ask you this, because the next episode is Unity. And I think I want to talk about these two together, because this really is the holy crap, we're getting into Borg space. We're not there yet, but we're getting there.
It's coming.
Yep. Right. So let's talk about Unity, because I think it's one or the other. It's not both. And I could be wrong, but let's just talk about it. Unity is an episode where Chakotay is injured and trapped on a world where the inhabitants are former Borg who have implants. And for the first time, we see people who used to be Borg who aren't Borg anymore, but they're still linked together. And that's its own thing.
And Chakotay becomes part of that.
And Chakotay becomes a part of that. That's a good episode, but like, there's so much other Borg stuff. I don't know. Like, to me, if it's one of the two, I think I go with Blood Fever and I leave the other behind. Like, I don't know that we need both, is what I'm saying. Or do we? What do you think, Phil? Because I think we have to take these two together. Like, we have to consider them. I would almost
be tempted to slam these two together, because in the
as a two-parter, put them together as a two-parter.
Yeah, in the air quotes canon stuff.
Right.
This is Blood Fever and Unity are the Necrid Expanse Part 2 and Part 3 in the arc.
Interesting.
To get through the Expanse. So
Right.
I could see, and I would definitely be in favor of slamming them together as a two-parter and calling it a day, because it's this huge buildup to what's coming.
Right.
And I mean,
it certainly sets the stage. It certainly sets the stage.
And you've got to know, and you've got to lay that foundation for the Borg returning, even though you may not know how it's, and I think that's part of the nice buildup that happens, is you don't know how it's going to happen or what exactly is going on, but they're coming. It's kind of building that anticipation to like, okay, how are the Borg are going to show up?
Right.
How's it going to go down?
Right. So obviously we had Picard get turned into a Borg and he came back from that. But outside of that, this is the first time that we've seen anybody de-Borgify. And considering that is the entire story of 7 of 9, that's her whole journey, is the journey back from being a Borg. Is there something to like having seen that it is possible that informs our view of 7 throughout the rest of the series?
Yeah, I think so. Because even though these guys have all been de-Borgified, that's a highly technical term.
Right.
It shows you that, they're no longer Borg, but they still need to be connected in some way.
Right.
They're unsure if they function as individuals. Whereas when we break 7 of 9 loose, that's it. She's cut off from the collective. I mean, with an exception in a couple of episodes, she is 100% cut off from the Borg and is just thrown into humanity like head first.
Right.
So laying that foundation, like, hey, these people can kind of do this, but they're still connected. And then seeing 7 actually doing it and her journey, it's a really good setup, I think.
I like that, because I had this as watch Blood Fever and then I was going to put Unity as extra viewing, but I like the idea of smushing them together. I did not consider that as a possibility. And the Necrid Expanse is just, because that's going to give us the 3 Necrid Expanse episodes
Yeah.
Like back to back to back, you know.
So you get the whole,
you kind of get that. Oh, should I put them together and make them all one? It's the Necrit Expanse trilogy. And save an episode spot.
Yep.
You know what?
Be like a three-fer.
You know what? I'm actually going to go watch. I'm going to watch these 3 episodes together like that and see if that forms something.
See if it makes sense.
And if it does, I may actually put these 3 together, even though all 3 are very different episodes and have very different things about them. You know,
I think you'll see the common storyline that kind of connects them together.
Yeah.
And the foundation there. I think so, because Alter Ego and Coda being in the middle are just bottle episodes that could have gone anywhere.
Right.
But I think if you look Fair Trade, Blood Fever, Unity.
They're just episodes that happen while they're crossing the expanse, and it doesn't matter. They could have happened anywhere in space.
Yeah. And they all just happen to have Borg stuff running through them.
Right.
Except Fair Trade, but whatever.
But I mean, it's kind of like that Gul Dukat series that we had. So, okay. Well, I'm going to look at that because I may squish these together as a single episode. I don't know. I'll have to look. I'll have to go look. So listeners out there, I'll do this.
I'll do the same thing. Okay. I'll rewatch all 3 in order.
Yeah.
I'll shoot you a quick note that you can read when you guys decide what to do.
Okay.
And see if we concur or not.
Okay. Sounds good. Well, with that, we've just discussed episodes 16 and 17. Let's move on to episode 18, Darkling. The Doctor alters his personality subroutines while Kes contemplates leaving Voyager for a boy. Oh, too bad she didn't. I mean, I'm sorry, what?
She's only 4, 3.5.
She can't make these life decisions at that age. Yeah. What do we think? Is this a watcher? Is this a skipper? Extra viewing?
If you're a Doctor / Kes fan, I would say it could be an additional viewing if you wanted it to. Is it essential? We've already hit on the Doctor's program evolving and stuff in past episodes this season. It does introduce the character of Leonardo da Vinci, which I'm a big fan of. I really like his character throughout the series. But it's a very minor Janeway thing. So,
and we're gonna get Leonardo in Scorpion, which we will be doing. And I don't think you need any preface to that. It's just she's on the holodeck and it's Leonardo's workshop.
They bring people there all the time. So it's not like it's this major like, what's Da Vinci doing on the holodeck?
Right.
It doesn't require any explanation. He's there. So what?
Right.
So I would have no problem taking a pass on this one.
Yeah. Frankly, I hate to say it's a Kes episode and we're skipping it.
Yeah. So it's an automatic for you.
Yeah. I do not like Kes. Let's talk about this next episode. This is one of those episodes I feel like every sci-fi show does. You take the 2 people who are just the odd couple of the show, you put them together, and for some reason they're always going up, whether they're in an elevator or they're climbing a mountain or they're blasting off to space or whatever they're doing, they're always going up, but it's the odd couple put in. Deep Space Nine did it. Stargate did it. I think I could be wrong. Probably Babylon 5 did it. I don't know. This Tuvok and Neelix were stuck in an elevator together for a long time. What do we think?
The world's longest elevator ride.
Right.
Yeah. So that's the only, I put a question mark on this one because I could argue probably both sides. You get that Neelix and Tuvok dynamic, which we do cover in other episodes, and you kind of see their relationship and how it kind of bounces back and forth. And this is also just like we had in a previous episode. This is Neelix still trying to figure out how he fits in. He's like, oh, I worked on a tether unit for a couple of years, blah, 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 on Talax.
Yeah.
So I can fix this, no problem. I'm like, really? This is not a case of fake it till you make it, Neelix. You can't let this. So could I see you watching it? Yeah, because of the relationship dynamics and stuff there. Does it do anything for the storyline? No. So am I going to argue with a no and taking a pass?
I tell you what,
I'm not gonna put up a hard fight on this one.
I've had this one in skip like hardcore. I don't like this episode. I'm an Neelix fan. I don't like this episode. I don't think it does anything good for the 2 characters. Although watching Tuvok and Neelix together is always a good time. I'm gonna move this one to extra viewing, and all I'm gonna just say is it's Tuvok and Neelix together, and I'll let Matt make the choice if he wants to watch it or not. And I'll leave it there because I probably oversell it too much of of not liking this movie. It's a fine episode. It's one that it's a laundry episode to me. Like I've got it on in the background while I'm cleaning the house and doing laundry. I'm not like, if this one comes on, I'm not like, oh, this episode, I'm sitting here, don't talk to me. Like it's not that. It's like if I got to get up and go to the bathroom in the middle of the episode, I'm not pausing it. It's
exactly. Kind of I'll let that baby, let it roll. Yeah. Because if I come back in 5 minutes or 15, it's going to be the same.
I'll be fine.
They're still going to be in the stupid tether going up.
Yep, exactly. All right. Well, moving on. Episode 20, moving right along. Favorite son, Harry learns that he's a changeling and he goes to see his people. Okay, not a changeling, but he learns that he's actually a member of a Delta Quadrant race and that his people want him to never leave again until it turns out that's not true at all. What do you think? Watch, extra view, or just skip all the way around?
So this episode, which could also be dubbed Harry's Horny, I'm going to have to give a pass to. Although this could have had significant chain effects on Harry's character. Mm-hmm. There was talk in the writing room when this episode was made that he would get out of the situation, but they couldn't do anything about the changes to his DNA. So he would have had the spots and everything for the rest of the series, and that bit of DNA stuck with him, which obviously didn't happen. Mm-hmm. And it's horny Harry, and he almost bites the bullet because of that. And
here's a question: is Harry Kim the Will Riker of Voyager?
He's the wannabe. He's like the Will Riker you get if you order off of Wish.com.
Right. No, but I mean, okay, this is a PG show.
He falls in love with the characters on the holodeck.
Yeah.
He dates the wrong sister. He's
the
Geordie LaForge. That's what he is.
Right, except he actually gets the girls though, right? Like Geordie never actually got the girl, like until all good things. Like
but that's the one thing they make fun of him, because he goes out on a date with like one of the twins, but it's the wrong twin.
It's the wrong twin, right? Yeah.
And he falls, but I mean, he does. He
falls in love with everybody. He
sees some action. He's got the one gal that's on the big generational ship. I don't remember the episode name. He falls in love with her, but that's a chemical thing. Yeah. It's like a permanent chemical bonding that happens when you're intimate with that species that he falls into. So it's like he got a reprimand and he got yelled at in Janeway's office for that.
Right.
So it's like whatever he does, it always seems to go sideways on him.
Mm-hmm.
So it's
maybe not Riker. I think he's the Geordie for sure.
He's the Geordie. He's the Geordie.
Honestly, you know what he is? He's the Brent from high school and college and most of his adult life actually on Voyager. Like I was,
are we relating to Harry a little bit?
Oh yeah. I absolutely I absolutely dated the wrong twin. Dated them both. Yeah. Anyway, that's a different story. We're not here to talk about Brent's past life. Hey, I do want to get into this episode though. Episode 21. It is a Kes episode. Before and after. Kes grows her hair out for some reason. We don't know why, but she finds herself in a temporal flux, going backwards through time. Memento. It's probably the best Kes episode that there is, in my opinion. I don't know what you think, Phil, but it's a solid episode. We get the mention of Year of Hell, which has a callback later, but I would no way, shape, or form say that makes it worthy just because of that. The people who play Kes's family later on are just boring, but the idea that Tom is her husband and Harry is her son-in-law, which is weird. Harry and Tom are father and son-in-law, which is weird, but I do think it's a good episode. It's a what the heck's going on kind of an episode. Yeah. But is it a watch or is it an extra viewing? I'll at least give it to extra viewing status. But what do you think? Talk me through this one.
Okay, so I'm with you on a lot of this. I may be able to get you to yes, because I'm always a fan in general of episodes that involve time travel, temporal flux, weird stuff going on with the space-time continuum. I'm usually like all in all the time. It's a Kes episode, but it's done so well. We also get introduced to the Krenim, who will become important in Year of Hell. And we get the first guest star of Anorax, who's played by Kurtwood Smith, who's one of my favorite characters ever from that 70s show. And you have to expect him.
Former president of the Federation. And I think he's
not a stranger to Trek.
He's done a lot of Trek. Yeah.
Yeah, which is always a good thing when we see people in repeat roles.
Sure.
But yeah, and you expect somebody to be told that they're going to get a boot in their ass because that's what he does. But it's really good. And I think you don't necessarily need that introduction to the Krenim, I don't think, for the future episodes.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of, it's almost like a teaser.
Yeah, it absolutely
but is. I think there's enough there between that, the Kess stuff. The family is kind of weird, but again, I'm a fan whenever there's any kind of temporal stuff going on, paradox, shifting the time continuum, anything like that. So it's a yes for me. I could see it being, if it went to an extra viewing, I would say like a strong recommendation for watching.
Now, see, and here's the thing about that, because I've done that before, and then I get up to it and go, look, if I'm gonna really push this for an extra viewing, then it just needs to be a part of the main run. You know what I mean? Like that's the other side of this. Like, I'm not trying to cheat the episodes,
shortchange episodes.
You know,
yeah.
As I say, seasons are they'll take as long as they take, or they'll go as short as they go. And what I think I'm realizing is this is turning into like a bell curve. Like, there was very few episodes of TOS we watched. There was more TNG. There's been a lot more DS9. And I think it's coming down on the other side of the bell curve. Like, TNG and Voyager will wind up being around about the same. And then when we get to Enterprise, it'll probably be more like TOS.
It'll drop off.
Yeah. Like that's the way I think it's probably going to go.
That's interesting. Because when I'm thinking about our rewatching, that's how it's kind of coming with, especially with David, who has no exposure to the series, seeing his reactions watching stuff for the first time. That's kind of how it's been. TOS was very low, and it's making its way up as we get through TNG now. So yeah, I could see that happening.
Yeah, I think that maybe, but anyway, okay. Cause I just, for history and my initial like writing of these down, I put this in watch, and then I went and watched it and I went, I really like this episode, but maybe I ought to move it down. So I sort of moved it down heading into this particular episode, but you're making a case for it.
I had it down as a watch.
You're making a case for it. And I'm kind of like, yeah, probably. If I'm waffling this much, I think I want to err on the side of watch it. Because we've certainly watched some episodes that later I kind of go, we probably gonna skip that one.
Probably could have skipped.
So,
and this kind of introduces Year of Hell, which are some of my favorite episodes.
Oh yeah, see now, like, so Year of Hell is one of those. It has zero bearing on the rest of the series, because you get to the end and they reset the timeline, and the whole episode doesn't matter anyway then, right?
You're shaking your fist at the sky.
Yeah, it's like, but it's such an iconic set of episodes that when people talk about Voyager, you're going to hear the idea of the Year of Hell. Again, I don't need them to say, yeah, we had the Year of Hell in this episode to then have that callback later. Like, I don't need that to be a whole episode.
Yeah, if you're going to skip one, you have to skip them all. Almost.
Right. So, but again, I mean, if I'm going to give him one Kess episode that's really good, like, this is the one to give him, Yeah. And all of a sudden Kess grows out her hair she grows out her hair as an older person, but when we catch up with her in the current timeline, she keeps it.
It's still this long curly blonde hair.
Yeah,
and it looks good.
So I thought she looked good. It shows her growing. See, they're growing her in age, and they should have done it 2 years ago.
They needed to last. Yeah, exactly.
All right. I hate her and Tom.
We're also and we're getting near the end.
We are
for her as well.
We are.
So
I hate her and Tom. I hate her and Tom together. It just does not work any way, shape, or form. But I get it if you've been watching, and maybe this gives me a chance to explain it to Matt without having to watch it. Is there's been this thread of Tom, like, yeah, there's B'Elanna, but there's also kind of been this whole Kess thing that Neelix has been jealous of, and he's kind of gone. But it's kind of been there, it's kind of not, and it just sort of is that little bit of a payoff that also gets us to the other side of it where it's not going to be a thing.
Oh yeah, because 90% plus of the conflict between Tom and Neelix has been because he sees Tom as a threat to Kess, to him and Kess.
Right.
So there was all that's happened over the last 2.5 seasons has been because of that. So
all right, well, let's move on. I'm going to move it up to the watch list just because. Okay. And our next episode 22, getting close to the end. Real life. We talked about this a little bit earlier tonight, just a little bit. The doctor learns a few real life lessons with a holographic family that he creates. That B'Elanna's like, hey, you're making that way too easy, and she ratchets up the hard all the way to teenager. And I might have cried at the end of this episode. As a father now, Phil, I don't know that I've actually watched this episode as a father since
Really?
I've been a father. No, I had to have. I've had to have. It's not been. I have a 9-year-old. It's not been 9 years since I've seen this episode.
okay, yeah, I have a 13-year-old, so
Yeah, but I don't. I said that Neelix episode was the only one that's ever made me cry. This one may get me.
yeah, it's
As a
one
dad.
of those you sit there and it's like,
Yeah. Okay. This is a heavy episode. It's a hard hitting episode.
it is.
It's a good episode. The doctor is growing and expanding, and this is a big way that we see him expand. But is it enough? Is it a you have to watch this episode type of episode, or do we skip it or throw it into extra viewing?
I think if B'Elanna wouldn't have tweaked the program and it would have continued on with the Leave It to Beaver family that he creates, I would say pass for sure. But when she tweaks the program and all of a sudden the daughter is doing her thing, the son's hanging out with Klingons and listening to Klingon opera and Klingon music, which is hilarious. And then I think with that tweaking and the doctor saying like, whoa, this is what it's really like to have a family. And I think with his daughter at the end,
Oh my gosh.
I think that probably justifies the whole episode.
And help me remember, because there's the whole thing where like he was going through the deal at the end and like he shut the program off and like, I'm not going to finish this. And like, I'm good. And he's all like, I'm good. And B'Elanna's like, or somebody was like, no, you have to go finish it.
Yeah, you have to do this.
Yeah. And she forced him to go through. Like, how did that come out on the other side? Like, what was the lesson, or so to speak, that we as an audience got, but also the doctor? Can you?
I think for him, it was being able to feel something he hadn't felt before, which he didn't really. I mean, he's dealt with death of crew members and stuff, but I don't think he hasn't really dealt with the death of anyone close to him yet. And I think that's what he's seeing, is what he's experiencing is how other people process the death of someone close to them. And I think that drives his empathy level and how he treats people just that little bit more. And because his bedside manner from the first episode, there's nothing there.
Right.
and that's developing. And I think that continues through this. And I think that's a huge step in his development is getting that empathy and seeing how people close to death handle things and how they need to be treated to process the passing better, if that makes sense.
It does. Yeah. And here's the thing, Voyager especially, I think takes a lot of heat for going soft on things. Like they set things up, they set ideas up, and then like they undo it by the end, or they don't follow it up and they just sort of let it fall through.
I do need to correct myself. It was Tom Paris that makes him go back and redo it, not B'Elanna.
Tom. Okay. Yeah. But when they go all the way to the end, like they did with Death Wish, where Quinn actually committed suicide, or like they did with Tuvix, or like in this one where the girl, it's always, why is it somebody dying, Phil? When they actually make somebody die.
That's the only way things happen. Yep.
But when you hit that, it hits such an emotional resonance that frankly, I think makes this show, as you said, one of the most underrated Star Trek shows out there. I think Voyager gets a lot of hate, and it shouldn't. And it's only now it's
taken 25 years for it to start getting
for
some
people
love.
to really, Voyager's always had its fans, but it's certainly not been the series that's held high on the pedestal.
It's not the next generation that's up on the pedestal, up on the highest mountain for all to see.
Right. Okay. So this one's going to be in watch, which is good because I had it as a watch as well. Although I didn't want it to be, but it is. And I don't think it can't not be, if that makes sense.
Yeah, especially when we're talking about episodes that drive character development.
Yeah.
And how things change over time.
And especially if we're going to miss the Swarm, where we talk about the doctor's program expanding, and you get to this one where the doctor is expanding. Like, you know,
we need to have some representation of that growth.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
For this season, at least. Yeah.
All right. Well, let's move on. Episode 23, Distant Origin. Hey, we talked about this a few minutes ago. An alien scientist finds evidence linking his reptilian species ancestry to Earth, but the government officials refuse because it conflicts with their existing doctrine. Star Trek has this is Star Trek doing a Star Trek message that's very pointed, especially for its day.
Yeah.
But is this a watch, or is it where do we go with this one? We've done this episode before.
Did you guys watch The Chase in The Next Generation?
No, but we did In the Hands of the Prophets for Deep Space Nine.
Yeah, then you probably don't need to watch this.
Yeah, which was similar to me, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those 3 episodes. This one, The Chase, and The Hands of Prophets are the 3.
Yeah,
they do it in every series. It seems like.
Yeah,
like these are our roots. This is where we came from. Somebody's going to have a problem with that. There's going to be conflict. How do we resolve it?
Right.
So.
Right.
Yeah. If you saw one of those other 2 episodes, then this one can be a pass.
We'll bury our head and ignore the science and just go with what because that's the way we want to be. Like,
and again, this falls into the category of it's a really good episode, but not necessary.
And we never see these guys again. If we saw these guys later on, maybe it'd be the introduction of that, but we don't.
We do the time-honored Trek tradition of introducing a species and never seeing them again.
You know, it always catches it. Like, we fly around the Alpha Quadrant like it's nothing. We fly around the Beta Quadrant like it's nothing. We run into the same species again and again and again. How are we like moving through this space and never running into these? Like, I get the idea you're moving forward, you're moving through whatever, but I mean, the Cardassians don't stay in Cardassian space. The Romulans don't stay in Romulan space. They're moving all over the place. Like, why is it different in the Delta Quadrant? I don't know.
Yeah, and on our show on Nerd Trek, that is the biggest complaint that David has is why do we never see any of these species ever again? Because there's a lot of really good ones that are introduced. Yeah, it's like, why don't they go back to the well on some of these?
Yeah,
so, it is what it is. And
then when we get to like Discovery, which is a prequel, starts as a prequel, we're introduced to the Kelpians, whom we've never seen before. And I get there's only like the one, but you know, it's like I don't know.
And I like in that series, I like the Kelpians and getting some of the story and how they live, and it's like, where have these guys been?
That's all I'm saying. Where have they been? Because you don't have to be in Starfleet. Like, go visit the world. Turns out we jacked you up. You know, we upset your whole order of being, and we're never going to hear from you. Like, you're a part of the Federation, but we never. I get and that's the idea, right? Like, there's a lot of worlds. It's just vast. We're not going to hit them all. Like, I get that, but like,
no, especially a species like that's a Federation member.
Yeah,
it's like we're not going to see you.
Yeah.
Okay, we're looking at the Federation flag. You're like the really tiny star up at the very top.
Yeah. But I get it as a television production. Like, you want to create new not monsters. You want to create new aliens and new species and expand the world. And in like the writers want to do that, and I'm all for them doing that. But I do think that especially if you're going to do anything that is set prior to TOS or to the TNG era, if you're in that range, I think you at least have to acknowledge where it's been. Where have you been this whole time? Mm-hmm. Why have we never seen you since this time? You've at least got to get us there, and you don't have to get us there the first episode. You know, like I'll give you the run of your show.
I'll give you time. Yeah, I'll give you time. Don't worry.
Yeah,
I'm patient.
Right. Like, you know, everybody's like free. You know, they're watching. I remember with the first season, especially of Discovery, everybody's like freaking out. Oh, there's this, and the producers are like, wait till we get to the end, guys. Just the story's not done. Just wait till we get to the end. And I'm cool to wait till the end before I start getting my hackles up. And I love all Star Trek. I love all the new Trek that's coming out right now. I really do. But you know, I think you have to acknowledge. You just have to acknowledge it. Just give me a line of dialogue. Where have you been? That's all I need to know.
Yeah, that's all I need. Just toss a little something, give me a little bone, and I'll be happy.
Yep. And then let's move on. So anyway, Distant Origin. We're gonna move that to. I'll put that in extra viewing. I don't mind that. I don't mind that one there. But not a watcher at all. Good episode. All right. Displaced. The crew begins disappearing one by one, being replaced with aliens who don't know what's going on until, oh yeah, we do. It's an invasion.
Yeah. This is an easy no. it's a good episode. If it's on, yeah, I'm watching it. And the way they get out of it is great. Again, another species, we never see him again. The story continues. It's a definite no.
Yeah, it's I mean, there's some Tom and Balana stuff in this episode, but it's not enough. Again, it's a laundry episode.
Including it. Yeah.
This is a laundry episode to me. So all right, I'm gonna keep this one on skip. All right, let's round this out. We only got 2 episodes left. Two that one we'll have to talk about, one we don't have to talk about. Let's talk about the one we do have to talk about first, because it's the next one. Worst case scenario, the crew gets enamored with a holo novel that depicts a mutiny by the Maquis on board Voyager, and turns out it's a Trojan horse by Seska, who's been dead and gone, but turns out she's still interfering with what's going on around the crew. Phil, I love this episode. This is a super fun episode.
100%.
But is it a watch? Like we've already said bye to Seska. She's dead.
Yeah.
She's gone. We've moved on. I love this episode. It would kill me to not watch this episode. But
it is. I put it as an extra viewing on mine because it's one of those, there's not enough stuff there that drives the story. The episode itself is great. This is one of the best episodes, like just to sit down and watch. Oh, it's great every time. It's like it doesn't get old. Just the whole premise behind it, the way it goes down, Seska being conniving till the end. It's a great episode, but it's a no for, or I should say it's an extra. It's like, hey, if you want to watch a fun episode that kind of gives a little bit of thought about, hey, what would happen if things weren't so copacetic and the Maquis really did try to take over Voyager, this is how it might go down, and how everybody might act. So for that stuff, it's really interesting. And like I said, good episode, but for me, it's an extra viewing at best.
Sure. Yeah, I'm with you on that. I think I just have to be, like I said, I have to be mature about this. I would love this. This one, there's an episode in Deep Space Nine called Civil Defense, which is, I don't know if you know that one off the top of your head. That's the one where Chief O'Brien goes in and he activates this latent program inside the station's computer where the computer thinks that there's like a Bajoran uprising.
That there's an uprising, a revolt going on.
Yeah. And they're like, they lock him down. And he's like, look, if you don't turn control over back to your Cardassian, and they input their code, which of course they're not there to do, then we're going to gas you and you're all going to die. And then Gul Dukat like shows up to like put in the code.
Voice in the screen. Yeah.
But then like it gets turned on. Like it's a great, super fun episode. Can't put it in a limited run show like this, but it's a fun episode.
Yeah, unfortunately,
this one is like that to me. So yeah, I'm gonna have to move it to extra viewing and leave it there, much to my chagrin.
And it's always fun to watch Chief O'Brien lose his mind because he can't solve a problem.
Oh, it is. Absolutely. All right. Well, we have now come to the season finale of the show. Episode titled Scorpion. It's not actually Scorpion Part 1. It's just Scorpion. And then we get Scorpion Part 2, in the next season. Obviously, we'll put this together. There's no question whatsoever that this episode is going to be in the run. But I do have a question for you about this.
Okay.
Because I've already done my preview for the next season as well. And what my question is should I put this set of episodes together? The Scorpion 1, the Scorpion 2. This is where we meet 7 of 9. But we don't actually even meet 7 of 9 until the second episode.
Right.
Like it's not like this doesn't end with, oh, here's 7 of 9, and then like we move on. But then we get the episode The Gift, which is the one where we lose Kess. But that's the episode where 7 of 9 deborgifies. Like they take the whole episode to let her deborgify. And then, like I said, Kess goes. Should this be a 3-parter that we roll into one and do Scorpion 1, 2, and The Gift and roll all that together as one episode? Now I know this is a little bit of season 5, but it matters because of what I'm going to tell Matt for the season finale here of season 3.
I'm going to go with yes, because The Gift it's basically Scorpion Part 3 anyways.
It is.
You've got the transition from 7. You've got the other plot of Kess and her transitioning and leaving. I would have no problem with rolling them all together because that's basically what's going to happen anyways. It's going to be a yes for sure. And you're talking about probably one of the major events in the series happening with Kess transitioning and 7 coming on. So absolutely.
Because frankly, watching these 3 episodes, the real cliffhanger is not between Scorpion 1 and 2. The real cliffhanger is at the end of Scorpion 2 when it goes into
what's going to happen.
Yeah. Because I think Scorpion 2 just ends with Seven being disconnected. Like that's
Yeah,
just sort of where it
yeah.
ends. And it's like, oh, well, what happens next? So I think that this together really makes up a whole thing. So I'm gonna smush all that together. I'm gonna make this a 3-parter for an episode, which has been a while since we've done that. So with that though, Phil, that is gonna bring us to the end of Voyager season 3. Let me recap what we decided, and I'll give you a chance if you want to make any final calls, any final pleads to move one up, down, or another. Here's what we've got in our watch list. In our watch list, we have Basics 1 and 2. We have Future's End 1 and 2. We'll watch the movie First Contact, although it's not really part of season 3. We'll do The Q and the Gray, Fair Trade, Blood Fever, and Unity together as an episode. Before and After, Real Life, and then we'll do The Scorpion 1, 2, and The Gift as one episode together. In extra viewing, we've got Flashback, we've got The Swarm, we've got False Prophets, Macrocosm, Rise, Distant Origin, and Worst Case Scenario. And in our skip column, we're not even going to mention The Shoot, Remember, Sacred Ground, Warlord, Coda, Darkling, Favorite Son, and Displaced. Phil, does that sound right to you? Is that a lock it in?
That's pretty much about where I figured we'd end up. About a third of the episodes, just take them right out to the trash. Another third are hard yeses, and another third kind of, yeah, you should probably watch these if you want to.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's about the mix that I kind of felt was going to happen. And there's none of them that I really want to fight anymore for that were on the maybe list.
All right.
Because they deserve, if they're on the maybe list for this season, they deserve to be on the maybe list or the extra viewing list.
Fair enough. With the exception of Worst Case Scenario, because I really, love that episode. Anyway, and even Flashback, that would be a good case for it as well.
Yeah.
Phil, thank you so much for your time to come in for these last, just under 2 hours here and talk with us, try to sort this out, because I got to tell you, as you know now, it's no simple task to go through and try to figure out what we watch and what we don't watch.
It is, but it's fun being able to analyze these episodes and look at them from a different perspective on what's really necessary to tell a story and what can just kind of be thrown to the side.
Right.
So I don't envy your task as you continue forward, but it's definitely great to listen to. And,
Sure.
And especially as you guys actually watch these episodes to see how it pieces the story together.
Sure.
With gaps.
And I'll say it doesn't happen every season, but it certainly has happened multiple times where Matt will say something. We'll be going through a thread with a story, and something comes up over the course of our conversation, and I go back to it and I go, actually, we have to watch that episode now, or I'm gonna flip these episodes because of kind of where we go. And I always maintain that right to I'm the host, I can make the call later, but sure. For the most part, like, it doesn't happen all the time, but it does happen from time to time. So it is interesting to me to see how this goes and how Matt receives these episodes. And not just that, but it's interesting to relive these episodes for the first time, because I think sometimes episodes only get better the more you watch them. And we forget, maybe the first time we actually saw that episode, we were like, but it grew on us over time. And now we hold it up to this big standard. I.e. like The Gift over in Deep Space Nine, or not The Gift, Duet over in Deep Space Nine, or City on the Edge of Forever from TOS, or, some of these other episodes that are like, yeah, this is a great episode. Maybe the first time, but the more you watch it, the more you fall in love with it. So, all right, Phil, well, that's going to do it for us for tonight. Where can everybody out there find you, follow you, and hear the work that you guys are doing, the great work you're doing over on your show? Sure.
So if you want to check out our journey, the Nerd Trek podcast is available on all the major podcast platforms out there. You can come follow us on Twitter at Nerd Trek Podcast, and there's links to all of our personal stuff on there too. There's usually a good meme on there once in a while. There's always a little recap of what's going on. So if you want to skip an episode or check one out, please feel free. And yeah, thanks so much for having me on tonight. It's been a lot of fun.
No, thanks. I'm glad we finally got to connect. This was a long time trying to get our schedules to mesh and get things in. I'm glad we got to do it, man. Thanks so much for coming back on, and hopefully we'll get you on in a future season as well, or
absolutely.
Some other.
I'm glad it was for Voyager, because I love Voyager, and getting to talk about it, especially now as it's gaining some popularity, it's a good thing.
There you go. Well,
it's one of my favorite series.
I got 4 more seasons of Voyager to go, so I very well could be calling. Because oddly, there's sometimes I ask people, they're like, "No, I don't want to do Voyager." I'm like, "Okay, fair enough." I know, right?
I can go for hours on Voyager.
Right? I love Voyager. I absolutely do. So, all right, Phil. Well, thank you again so much. For those of you out there listening, you guys know how to get in contact with us. Just go over to beammeuppod.com And you guys can check out everything we're doing. Don't forget beammeupgiveaway.com for that giveaway that we told you about at the very, very beginning. And that'll do it for us for now. Until next time, folks, live long and prosper.